The biting Chicago wind was a relentless thief, stealing the last vestiges of warmth from Sarah's thin jacket. It whipped around the corners of the Northwestern Memorial Hospital, a place of sterile hope and quiet desperation that had become the unlikely backdrop to her life. At 17, Sarah was a ghost in the Windy City, her existence an unregistered footnote in the bustling metropolis. Her home was a shifting landscape of alleyways and shelters, her bed a flattened cardboard box, her possessions stuffed into a tattered backpack. Her blonde hair, once a sunny cascade, was now matted and dull, and her blue eyes, though still bright with a defiant spark, held a weariness that belied her years. She had been on her own for 2 years, a casualty of a family that had fractured and crumbled, leaving her to navigate the treacherous currents of the world alone. Yet, amidst the daily struggle for survival, a strange ritual had taken root. Each day, she would find her way to the vicinity of the hospital, drawn by an invisible thread of connection to a story that had captivated the nation. Jeffrey Jordan, the son of the legendary Michael Jordan, lay inside, trapped in the silent abyss of a coma. The news had been everywhere. A horrific car crash on a rain-slicked night. A promising young man, heir to a legacy of greatness, now suspended between life and death. For most, it was a headline, a fleeting moment of sympathy before the page was turned. For Sarah, it was something more. She had grown up on tales of Michael Jordan, his gravity-defying dunks and championship rings a modern myth. He was a symbol of perseverance, of a will so strong it could bend reality. In her darkest moments, she would whisper his name like a mantra, a reminder that greatness could be forged in the crucible of hardship. And so, she kept her vigil. She'd sit on a cold bench in the small park across the street, watching the tinted windows of the hospital, imagining the silent drama unfolding within. She'd read discarded newspapers, piecing together the narrative of the Jordan family's ordeal. She saw the pictures of Michael, his face a mask of stoic grief, a titan brought to his knees by a father's worst fear. She saw the pain in his wife Yvette's eyes, a reflection of the helplessness that gnawed at her own soul. Sarah's connection to the Jordans was forged in the shared language of basketball. Her father, before he had disappeared from her life, had been a devoted fan. He had taught her the rhythm of the game, the squeak of sneakers on polished wood, the satisfying swish of the net. He'd given her a worn basketball, now her most prized possession, which she kept at the bottom of her backpack. Sometimes, in the quiet of a deserted playground, she would shoot hoops, the familiar motion a comforting echo of a life that felt a lifetime away. One particularly brutal December afternoon, as the sky threatened a blizzard, the cold became unbearable. Sarah's fingers were numb, her face a frozen mask. The warmth of the hospital lobby beckoned, a siren call of survival. With a deep breath, she pushed through the revolving doors, melting into the anonymous stream of visitors. She kept her head down, her ragged clothes a stark contrast to the quiet affluence around her. She found a secluded corner, sinking into a plush armchair, the warmth seeping into her bones like a long-lost friend. From her vantage point, she could see the entrance to the VIP wing, a discreet corridor patrolled by security. It was there, she knew, that Jeffrey Jordan lay. Days turned into a week. Sarah became a master of invisibility. She would slip in during the morning rush, find a quiet spot, and leave as the evening visitors thinned out. She was careful, respectful, never causing any trouble. She'd watch the Jordans from a distance as they came and went, their faces etched with a sorrow so profound it was almost tangible. She saw Michael, not as the global icon, but as a father, his broad shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. It was a kindly night nurse named Maria who first noticed her. Maria had a gentle face and eyes that saw beyond the surface. She didn't see a homeless girl. She saw a child in need of kindness. One evening, as she was doing her rounds, she found Sarah asleep in the chair, her basketball clutched to her chest. "Honey, you can't sleep here," Maria said softly, gently shaking her awake. Sarah's eyes flew open, fear flashing in them. "I'm sorry. I'll leave." Maria placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "It's all right. but you looked like you could use a warm meal." That night, Maria shared her break with Sarah in the hospital cafeteria. She listened to Sarah's story, her heart aching for the girl's resilience and quiet dignity. An idea, unconventional and perhaps even reckless, began to form in her mind. She had seen the toll the coma was taking on the Jordan family, the suffocating silence of the hospital room. The doctors had encouraged them to talk to Jeffrey, to stimulate his senses, but their words were often choked with grief. "You know a lot about basketball, don't you?" Maria asked, noticing the way Sarah's eyes lit up when she spoke of the game. Sarah nodded shyly. "My dad taught me." "Jeffrey loves basketball too," Maria said. Maybe you could talk to him about it." The suggestion was audacious, a breach of every protocol. But Maria was a believer in the mysterious ways of the human heart. She saw a spark in Sarah, a pure, unadulterated passion that might just be able to penetrate the veil of Jeffrey's coma. And so, under the cloak of Maria's compassionate conspiracy, Sarah found herself standing at the threshold of Jeffrey Jordan's room. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and flowers. The only sound was the rhythmic beep of the machines that tethered him to life. He lay still, his handsome face pale and peaceful, a sleeping prince in a modern-day fairy tale. Michael and Yvette had just left, their faces drawn and weary. Maria had given Sarah a small window of opportunity. With a trembling heart, Sarah pulled a chair to Jeffrey's bedside. She didn't know what to say. The words felt clumsy, inadequate. She started by talking about the weather, the snow that was now blanketing the city. Then, hesitantly, she began to talk about basketball. She didn't talk about the accident, or the pain, or the uncertainty. She talked about the glory of the game. "Your dad, he was something else," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I saw this old game on a TV in a store window the other day. It was the '97 finals. The flu game. He was so sick, but he played like a man possessed. It was like he refused to lose. He taught everyone that you can be stronger than your circumstances." She talked for hours, her voice a soft murmur in the quiet room. She recounted legendary plays, iconic moments, the poetry of a perfectly executed fast break. She spoke of the triangle offense, of Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, of the dynasty that had defined an era. She wasn't just reciting facts. She was weaving a tapestry of passion, a tribute to the game that had been a bridge between her and her own father, and now, a fragile thread of connection to this silent young man. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's visits became a secret ritual. Maria would ensure the coast was clear, and Sarah would slip in, her backpack with its precious cargo in tow. She would sit by Jeffrey's bed and talk, her voice a constant, soothing presence. She never expected a response. It was enough to be there, to offer this small, strange gift of companionship. One afternoon, as a pale winter sun streamed through the window, Sarah was describing the final moments of the 1998 NBA Finals. She held her worn basketball in her lap, her fingers tracing the familiar lines. "And the clock was ticking down," she said, her voice full of the drama of the moment. "Everyone thought it was over, but your dad, he never gave up. He stole the ball from Karl Malone, and that last shot. It was like the whole world held its breath. Swish, nothing but net. The crowd went insane. It was perfect." As she spoke, she gently placed the basketball in Jeffrey's hands, resting it on his chest. "This was my dad's," she said softly. "It's seen better days, but it's got a lot of good games left in it." And then it happened. A flicker, a barely perceptible twitch of his fingers against the rough surface of the ball. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She stared, her heart pounding against her ribs. Had she imagined it? Then another twitch, stronger this time. His fingers curled, a faint, almost imperceptible pressure. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. She leaned closer, her voice a trembling whisper. "Jeffrey, can you hear me?" Slowly, as if being pulled from the depths of a vast ocean, his eyelids fluttered. The beeping of the machine seemed to quicken, a frantic symphony of hope. And then, after 97 days of silence, Jeffrey Jordan opened his eyes. They were hazy at first, unfocused, but they were open. He was awake, and the first thing he saw was the face of a homeless girl with tears streaming down her cheeks, a radiant smile breaking through her fear. The moments that followed were a blur of frantic activity. Nurses rushed in, doctors were paged, and the quiet room was suddenly filled with a cacophony of voices. Sarah, overwhelmed and realizing her precarious position, slipped out of the room, her heart a wild drum against her ribs. She had done something impossible, something miraculous, and she was terrified. She fled the hospital, melting back into the anonymity of the city streets, the worn basketball still clutched in her hands. She didn't know that back in that room, as the Jordan family wept with joy, Jeffrey's first raspy words were, "The girl, the basketball girl." Michael Jordan, a man accustomed to the extraordinary, was thunderstruck. The doctors had no medical explanation. It was, they said, a 1-in-a-million anomaly. But Michael knew better. He had seen the way his son's eyes searched the room, the faint but insistent question in them. He'd listened as Jeffrey, his voice gaining strength each day, recounted the fragmented memories of his time in the darkness. A soft voice, stories of basketball, the feel of a worn leather ball in his hands. Finding the basketball girl became Michael Jordan's singular focus. He dispatched his security team, a formidable force of discreet professionals. But Sarah had vanished, swallowed by the vastness of the city. She was afraid of the attention, of the questions, of the disruption to her fragile existence. She had performed a miracle and then run from it, convinced that she had no place in that world of wealth and fame. For 2 weeks, they searched. Michael grew increasingly frustrated. He felt an overwhelming debt to this mysterious girl, a gratitude so profound it was a physical ache. He needed to find her, to thank her, to understand how she had succeeded where all the money and medicine in the world had failed. It was Maria, the night nurse, who finally provided the missing piece of the puzzle. Overcome with guilt for her role in the secret visits, but also with a fierce pride in what Sarah had accomplished, she confessed everything to Michael. She described the homeless girl, her passion for basketball, her quiet dignity. Armed with this new information, the search intensified. They focused on the shelters, the soup kitchens, the playgrounds in the city's forgotten corners. And finally, on a bitterly cold afternoon, they found her. She was in a small, deserted park, shooting hoops with her worn basketball, her movements fluid and graceful, a fleeting image of joy in a landscape of urban decay. 2 large men in dark suits approached her cautiously. Sarah's first instinct was to run, but there was a gentleness in their demeanor that held her in place. "Sarah?" one of them asked. "Mr. Jordan would like to see you." The ride to the Jordan estate was a surreal journey. Sarah sat in the back of a gleaming black SUV, the worn backpack on her lap, the city flashing by in a blur of lights. She was terrified, convinced she was in some kind of trouble. What had she been thinking? Sneaking into a hospital, talking to a comatose boy. She was led into a house that was more like a palace, a sprawling testament to a life of unparalleled success. The air was warm, the silence profound, and then he was there, Michael Jordan. Taller than she had imagined, his presence filling the room. He wasn't the larger-than-life icon from the posters. He was a father, his eyes filled with a raw, unguarded emotion. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick with a gratitude that needed no further explanation. And in that moment, Sarah's fear melted away, replaced by a sense of awe and a strange, unexpected feeling of coming home. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Sarah was given a room, a warm bed, new clothes. She ate at a table laden with more food than she had ever seen, but it was the quiet moments that meant the most. The long talks with Michael, who listened to her story with an intensity that made her feel seen for the first time in years. The shy smiles of Yvette, who treated her with a gentle, maternal kindness. And then there was Jeffrey. His recovery was slow but steady. He remembered her voice, the stories she had told. He looked at her with a mixture of awe and gratitude, a bond forged in the silent depths of his coma. They would spend hours together, talking about basketball, about life, about the strange and miraculous circumstances that had brought them together. Sarah, who had been alone for so long, found in Jeffrey a brother, a confidant, a friend. Michael Jordan was a man of action. Gratitude, for him, was not a passive emotion, it was a call to arms. He saw in Sarah not a charity case, but a reflection of the same fire that had driven him to greatness, a resilience, a spirit that refused to be extinguished. He knew that simply giving her a home was not enough. He had to give her a future. He enrolled her in the best private school in Chicago, hired tutors to help her catch up. He saw her love for the game and arranged for her to be coached by some of the best trainers in the country. He nurtured her talent, not just on the court, but in the classroom, encouraging her to dream bigger than she had ever dared. But it was what he did next that was truly unbelievable. One crisp autumn afternoon, he took Sarah and Jeffrey to a groundbreaking ceremony in the heart of the city. A crowd had gathered, a mix of city officials, philanthropists, and media. A large banner billowed in the breeze, and on it were the words, "The Sarah, Jeffrey Jordan Foundation for Homeless Youth." Sarah stared at the banner, her heart swelling with an emotion so powerful it took her breath away. Michael stepped to the podium, his voice resonating with a quiet authority. "We are here today because of a miracle," he began, his eyes finding Sarah in the crowd. "A miracle of human connection, of compassion, of the enduring power of the human spirit. My son is alive today because of a young woman who had nothing, but who gave everything she had, her time, her passion, her voice." He went on to announce the creation of the foundation, a multi-million-dollar initiative dedicated to providing shelter, education, and opportunities for homeless youth in Chicago and beyond. There would be safe houses, scholarship programs, sports facilities, and mentorship programs, all designed to give these forgotten children a fighting chance. "This foundation," he concluded, his voice thick with emotion, "is not about charity. It is about a debt of gratitude to a young woman who reminded me that the greatest victories are not won on the basketball court, but in the human heart." As the crowd erupted in applause, Michael stepped down from the podium and enveloped Sarah in a hug. In that moment, she was no longer the homeless girl, the ghost of the Windy City. She was a symbol of hope, a catalyst for change, a beloved daughter in a family she had never imagined she would have. The years that followed were a testament to the transformative power of that one unbelievable act. The foundation flourished, changing the lives of thousands of children. Sarah, with the unwavering support of her new family, graduated at the top of her class and went on to college, where she studied social work, her passion for helping others now her life's purpose. She and Jeffrey remained inseparable, their bond a constant reminder of the miracle that had brought them together. She would often watch him play basketball, his movements a graceful echo of his father's, and she would smile, her heart full of a gratitude that was too deep for words. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, she would take out the worn basketball, its leather now soft with age. She would hold it in her hands and remember the cold, the hunger, the loneliness. And she would remember the soft voice that had whispered stories of greatness in the silent room of a sleeping boy, a voice that had, against all odds, awakened a soul and, in doing so, had awakened her own. The homeless girl was gone, but the spirit that had refused to be broken had found its home, not in a mansion, but in the enduring embrace of a family forged in the crucible of a miracle.